Ears and Beers, episode 35, a disaster class at Phog Allen Fieldhouse. Oh gosh, episode 35, really? I gotta do this depressing discussion on the Owen Schmidt episode. Before we react to Kansas, first as always, what are we drinking? Wesley Uhler with you here, and I'm drinking, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see Troegs Nougat Nectar. Fantastic beer. The only way to wash down a disappointing loss like that. Prost. Second half disaster class. That's about as cut and dry as you can put it. Now you're 0-10 all time at the Allen Fieldhouse. Of course, they had to give us hope there in the first half. Let's get right into it. Good news. Let's start with a couple good things. All right. Let's do the positive thing here just for a minute or two before I do some venting before we talk some of the negative. Couple things of good news. One, I think that you learned you can hang with teams without Taz, without Sean McNeil. 2 points from Taz in the first half, 2 points from Taz in the second half. He made just one field goal. He's clearly not right. We'll talk about that in a minute. Sean McNeil, very quiet game from him as well, too, particularly in the second half. 15 points combined from those guys. Just 2 points for Taz in the first half, yet it was still a one-possession game, 33-31 at halftime. I think that's good. At the beginning of the season, a month ago, you knew that this team couldn't hang unless everything was running through Taz. At least that's not the case now, but you couldn't afford what we had today. And let's get right into that, actually, before we get back to one or two other nuggets of good. I'm going to be all over the place today. I've been drinking for a few hours already on Saturday afternoon. Manchester United played. That's one of my teams. They blew a 2-0 lead, and then followed by the disaster class at Allen Fieldhouse. I'm whooshing a little bit, all right? So bear with me. I'll be all over the place. I'm going to be like Charlotte's Web today. I'm going to be bouncing around back and forth. Let's talk about Taz for a minute. His ankle clear. Well, first, I think he's still dealing with some effects from COVID. We know, listen, I don't care where you are on the political spectrum, you dorks, all right? But we all know COVID affects everybody differently. For some people, it's no problem. It's keep it moving. It's rock and roll. It's something light. For other people, though, including a lot of high-level athletes like Taz Sherman, they lose some weight, they get fatigued, it takes them a while to get their legs back underneath them. I'm fortunate enough, I host a radio show on the Steelers radio network with Arthur Moats, former Steelers linebacker. He's 33 years old still. He's in really good shape. He got COVID a few months ago, and he told me it took him a few weeks. Like, he would get fatigued just walking up and down the stairs, just walking out to get his mail. And that's a guy who played in the NFL for a decade. So, again, affects everybody differently. I do think Taz is still dealing with some lingering effects of COVID. But he's definitely dealing with an ankle that clearly isn't right. And it hasn't been. And even with him getting a week off due to COVID, actually 2 weeks off, I think, it was about probably 12, 13 days, maybe more, in between when he played games. With the one game he missed at Texas, his ankle isn't right. He injured it early in the season, and it's clearly not gotten any better, and he's going to play through it. But why is he playing those pointless minutes at the end of the game? I tweeted that out on our Ears and Beers account, at Ears and Beers on Twitter. If you're a Twitter person, I tweeted, Taz's ankle clearly isn't right. Why is he playing these pointless minutes right now? His mom liked that tweet. Taz Sherman's mother liked that tweet. That tells me also his ankle ain't right. And that's maybe the most discouraging thing today. If that's going to affect Taz all season, that's going to affect this team all season. But okay. Two more good things before we get back into some of the bad. First, well, I did say first, is that you learned you could still score some points. You can still survive for moments, for stretches when Taz and maybe Sean McNeil aren't on, but you can't have that. You can't what you had today. They got 11. They combined for 15 points. That just ain't going to cut it between your two best players and your two leading scorers. The game does look like it's starting to slow down for Malik Curry, though. That's good news. I've got it right here. He had 23 points today, by far leading the Mountaineers in scoring. The game's slowing down for him. That's important. We've talked about how a concern for this team is not having an experienced ball handler in those big moments. It's slowing down for Malik Curry. Hopefully today was a real building block for him to continue upon that. Hopefully a confidence builder, even though the team got crushed. He played clearly his best game of the season. Let's hope that continues. That would be huge for Big 12 tournament play. And hopefully when you get into, Big 12 conference play. And then once you hopefully get into tournament time as well too. Final piece of good news is that it looks like the free throw yips are gone. This is now 5 straight games ever since UAB, ever since that terrible performance at the charity stripe against UAB nearly cost the Mountaineers that game down in Alabama. 5 straight games now they've shot very well from the free throw line. 5 straight games they've been above 70% from the line. And I think it's now 4 straight games that they've been above 80% from the line. Don't quote me on that. I know it's 5 straight, though, over 70%. I think 4 straight over 80%. That's good. This team was aggressive in the first half. They were getting to the free throw line, and that's what kept them in the game early. As soon as the whistle stopped for WVU, it was over. But it was the free throw shooting that kept them in the game early. And again, that's another encouraging thing because we certainly wouldn't have thought that that was going to be the case a month ago as well. All right, now bad news, other than some of the stuff that we discussed with Taz, play inside the paint offensively, I think is the thing. I said this on our last podcast, for as good as this team is at protecting the rim, not so much today, but for the rest of the season up until this point, they've been very good at protecting the rim. They're that bad on the offensive end. At one point late in the second half, it was 42-16 Kansas in terms of points in the paint. I didn't see the final stat, but I think it ended like 48-18 or 50-18. Something. It was horrible. It was so lopsided. Kansas almost outscored WVU in the paint 3-1. That can't happen. They have there's nobody on this team that has touch around the rim, really. That includes the guards, not just the big men. I used this hockey analogy earlier on one of our podcasts too. They're all Swedish, no finish. They make some great passes. They get some great looks in the paint, and they just miss so many bunnies. There's no touch around the rim. You get outscored like that, you get pummeled like that in the paint, it's going to be difficult to win games. You know, one of the most encouraging things about this team to this point in the season, I think, had been their refusal to die. Like, you just couldn't kill this team. That was not the case today. They just didn't look up for it. Even though it was a 2-point game at halftime, those last few minutes of the first half, not good. When they were up from the point that WVU was up 8 in the first half, they got outscored by, let me do the quick math on this. If it's 25, 26 plus, what's 26 plus 8? 34. WVU was outscored by 34 points from the moment that they were up late, or that they were up 8, pardon me. I'm feeling a little buzz, folks. Let's try this again. WVU was outscored 34 points. I can't believe I just did this quick math in my head with a slight buzz. WVU was up 34 points, or crap. What is my BAC right now? WVU, I'm going to get it right this time, I promise, was outscored 34 points from late in the first half when they were leading by 8. So you went from leading by 8 late in the first half. At that moment, you were outscored by 34 the rest of the game. Not good, Cotton. And that's, again, that's been a theme of this season. This team at some point every first half goes stone cold, Steve Austin style. For 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes, they just can't buy a bucket. And you can't have that happen against a team like Kansas. And even though it was a 2-point game at halftime, and there was a lot of encouraging stuff that this team did in the first half, I don't want to take that away from them in hindsight now that they got blown out. But you can also see the warning signs were on the wall in the first half. They were fortunate to hang in there. Like I said, you got to give them credit. They were aggressive. They were getting to the rack, and they were getting to the free throw line and drawing fouls because of it. But as soon as you stopped getting those calls, it was over. And of course, right, this was the rare game where the officials in Kansas actually called more fouls on the Jayhawks than they did the Mountaineers. But some of that, too, was probably also just the process of how the game played out and set. When a team is blowing out another team like Kansas was WVU in the second half, you're not going to call a bunch of fouls on the team that's getting their shit pushed in. Like, it's just not going to happen. No Taz, no points in the paint, no chance. And I'm really concerned about that ankle. I am, especially because his mom liked that tweet. It's not good. And you know what, too? Like what I talked about with this team looking like they were always in every game, even when they're down 17 to Kansas State, felt like, and I said it when we did our halftime reaction. I do halftime reactions on Twitter at Eers and Beers. Halftime against Kansas State, I think we were down 13 and we were down 17 shortly before that. I said, they're going to still win this game. They're good. That was not the case today. Like they didn't look up for it. And that's concerning when you just look at the absolute gauntlet of a schedule that awaits. Taz Sherman's health as it relates to him recovering from COVID and his ankle clearly not being 100%, combined with the rolling over and dying that we saw from this team today in the second half, that's not good when you're about to just run through the gauntlet of the Big 12 hell here in the next couple weeks. Oh, plus a trip to Arkansas for the Big 12 SEC showdown. I last thing, I think, unless my buzzed brain thinks of something else. I'm never going to sit here and criticize Bob Huggins, question Bob Huggins, lamb-based Bob Huggins. That dude has forgotten more about basketball than I'll ever know. But at times, there's just always been some stubbornness with Huggy, right? And in a way, it's funny. That's why we love him so much. He's one of us in that regard. He's very blue-collar, West Virginia mentality, treadmill mentality in that regard. I did love his willingness to go to the 1-3-1 in the second half. Let me say that first. I loved the willingness to go there. But that wasn't the time. With the personnel that you had on the court, unhealthy Taz, JB wasn't out there, and he was a little banged up today. Gabe Osaboyan did not look like himself, and he was a little banged up today. With the personnel that you had on the court at that moment, combined with a Kansas team that shoots well, it just wasn't the right time to run the 1-3-1. Kansas was not turning the ball over, and they were shooting well. That's exactly how you break a zone. So again, I don't have the credentials to sit here and question Bob Huggins. I did love the willingness to run the 1-3-1. I did, because I do think that that's something we should employ more, just not in those moments. Not when you don't have the right personnel on the court, not when the guys that you need are having off nights that clearly aren't 100% healthy, and not when you're playing a team like Kansas, who takes care of the ball and who knocks down those open shots, those corner threes with ease. Frustrating. Every time you play Kansas in general in basketball in the Big 12, it takes years off your life, but particularly when you have to go to Lawrence. 5 years off my life every time. Unbelievable. If we ever get in the ACC one day, at least we'll know what to expect every time we go to Cameron Indoor to play Duke. Same church, different pew. All right, that's going to do it for today. We'll have more of these reaction pods because we're about to hit full swing of basketball season. Baylor on Tuesday, Texas Tech at the weekend. Things don't get easier. So I'll talk to you guys then. Hey. How about that Graham Harrell hire, huh? Oh, before we go, starting quarterback for the Backyard Brawl. September, Heinz Field, those stinking Pitt Panthers. I think I'm still sticking with Tyson Bagent right now. It's not going to be Jackson Dart, unfortunately. I think I'm going Tyson Bagent, but close to Will Crowder. But Tyson Bagent is going to be your starting quarterback game one against the Panthers. Try to enjoy your Saturday, everybody. Cheers. Let's go Mountaineers. Let's go drink some beers.